Kamikaze. Her father embarked at sunrise with a flask of water, a samurai sword in the cockpit, a shaven head, full of powerful incantations, and enough fuel for a one-way journey into history. But halfway there, she thought, recounting it later to her children, he must have looked far down at the little fishing boats strung out like bunting on a green-blue translucent sea. And beneath them, arcing in swathes, like a huge flag waved first one way, and then the other, in a figure of 8, the dark shoals of fishes, flashing silver as their bellies swiveled towards the sun, and remembered how he and his brothers, waiting on the shore, built cairns of pale grey pebbles to see whose withstood longest the turbulent inrush of breakers, bringing their father's boat safe. Yes, grandfather's boat, safe. To the shore, salt sodden awash, with cloud-marked mackerel, black crabs, feathery prawns, the loose silver of a whitebait, and once a tuna, the dark prince, muscular, dangerous. And though he came back, my mother never spoke again in his presence, nor did she meet his eyes. And the neighbours too, they treated him as though he no longer existed. Only we children still chatted and laughed, till gradually we too learned to be silent, to live as though he had never returned, that this was no longer the father we loved. And sometimes she said he must have wondered which had been the better way to die. Kamikaze originally, around the World War II area, meant Japanese fighter pilots who were sent on suicide missions. So these pilots, they were sent into this war, they were sent over to these other countries in order to fight for their country, but they did so knowing that this meant that their life would inevitably come to an end, that they would end up dying midway through this mission, maybe not even fulfilling their purpose. It has more recently come to mean any sudden or violent attack on the enemy, which then leads us to the other meaning, which leads us to willing to take risks and not worrying about safety. This does directly link with the original meaning, where Japanese fighter pilots were sent on suicide missions, so they're not worrying about their own safety. They're only willing to take the risk to become a hero for their country. They're willing to try and fight to get themselves out of this war. So moving straight into the first line, we see her father embarked at sunrise with a flask of water, a samurai sword. The first word here, the third-person pronoun, shows us that this is a perspective of an overlooker, someone in the distance, someone who hasn't lived this experience personally. So this is set in Japan, and it's described like an adventure or a discovery or something, anything other than war or pain or anything of this sort. So with the line flask of water, samurai sword, this is juxtaposition, as a flask of water is often seen as a symbol of life, whereas a samurai sword is often a symbol of death. So, in the cockpit, a shaven head, full of powerful incantations. These rituals, such as having a shaven head, show that the pilot is ready to die for his country. His dignity is high. He doesn't care what he must do, and he is willing to go and fight. He's willing to try and become that hero for his country, for his place. He's willing to try and get them out of whatever is going on, this war. So full of powerful incantations hints towards sort of a brainwashing experience, like a prayer for survival. Like he has no choice but to do this, but then again, he feels as though no matter whether he was given the choice or not, this is what he would want to do. This is what he needs to do. Like he feels like this is something he has to do. He's got no choice. Now you see, where it says enough fuel for a one-way journey into history, this is just saying that he's not expected to return. It's a one-way journey into becoming history. Like this is a suicide mission. He is expected to go, fight, die, not come back. Here, when trying to move to the next stanza, we notice that there is no punctuation. And so this lack of punctuation means that this is enjambment, which builds suspense between the stanzas and lets the readers understand that they're not going to know what happens next until they've read on. We don't know what is going to happen to this man on this suicide mission. So, in the centre of this next stanza, it says, he must have looked far down at the little fishing boats strung out like bunting on a green-blue translucent sea. So here, the perspective we are looking through, she's not sure what actually happened or what he may have been doing when he's flying this plane. She doesn't know. She wasn't there. It's not her experience. She's just going based off of what she is assuming. She's trying to justify why she thinks this was happening, what she thinks was happening. And the fact that she is signifying the little fishing boats, this shows that this is somewhat an essence of who he is, his country, and how he was brought up. And alongside this, the fact that it compares them to bunting gives us the idea that this may be a public celebration or even appreciation for these fighter pilots who are literally sent to die, pretty much, in aid of helping their country. It then goes on to describe the sea as green, blue, translucent. This imagery suggests that this pilot was really thinking about this difficult decision. He was considering whether or not it was right that he should go through with this. Moving on to the next stanza, where it states, like a huge flag waved first one way, then the other in a figure of 8. This could connote to either infinity, which is like the eternal pain that is going to be suffered by this country if he does not go, or surrender. So it presents two opposing ideas. So the eternal pain he's going to be feeling, or should he surrender and just go back and live his life? So this all leads to the decision making, the difficult decisions that they all have to make before going on these journeys, whether that's their decision to make or not. In the end of this stanza it says, flashing silver as their bellies swivel towards the sun. This is a symbol of submissiveness, like the pilot. So this pilot is just going along with whatever he's told. He's doing what he should do. He's not breaking the rules. He's doing this, he's doing that. He's doing everything that he has been told he has to do. So this could also link to the idea that nature is imitating or mocking him. So because he is being submissive in this sense, these fish, they flip over. They're showing their submissiveness to kind of mirror his inner thoughts and what he is actually doing as a person without him fully realizing. So we can then see in the next stanza where it says, and remembered how he and his brothers waiting on the shore built cairns of pale grey pebbles to see whose withstood longest the turbulent inrush of breakers, bringing their father's boat safe. So here we see that the entire stanza, the descriptions, they're all linking back to the feeling of being homesick, about how it might have felt to be getting into that plane and just looking around you and remembering all these things, reminiscing on what they used to do together. For example, here, him and his brothers building cairns of pearl grey pebbles on the shore, and they're competing, they're having fun, innocent fun. But here, the turbulent inrush of breakers. This can either connote to the obvious turbulence of being in a plane, or the more inner turbulence of the feelings and the longings of going back, and just the fluctuation of different feelings that may be bashing around inside of his head while trying to do this. The last line here, bringing the father's boat safe, however, is a method of irony. So if he dies, the boat won't be safe. This is a sense of continuity being broken no matter what they do. If that man dies, their father dies, that boat isn't safe. That boat isn't going to be safe. Whether these waves, they bring them back and they place them on shore, no matter what. This man dies, the boat is not safe. So here on the beginning of the next stanza, this here is questionable, as it begins with yes, grandfather's boat, safe. It is a memory of family and linking to different generations. However, this may also be seen as a fourth wall break. So the fact that it goes from father to grandfather makes you think that the person who is actually narrating is retelling a story that was retold years ago. So, also just quickly linking back to the previous stanza, we see that the pilot, is taking in all of these intricate details in his surroundings, details that he may not have noticed before. And he's noticing these because his mind's racing. These could be his last moments, and he's just happening to notice all these tiny, intricate details that no one else might notice ever in their lives. And the idea that these boys, they were building cairns. These were usually burial mounds to mark graves or memorials. It's like an innocent game, but the way in which it's described with the context, it presents very dark undertones in that it may be a form of foreshadowing their own deaths. So the fact that they're each building a burial mound to mark graves, to see whose would last longest, it's almost as if they're subconsciously betting on who shall survive the longest, who shall be able to survive all these bashings, not off the sea. Metaphorically, it's more of the use of the waves being turbulent in rush of breakers. This could symbolise the idea that it's not the waves that's breaking against them. It's society, it's reality, it's these bombs, it's this fighting, it's this war. So as we go back down to this stanza again, it says, "Yes, grandfather's boat, safe, to the shore salt sodden awash." This sibilance indicates the idea that nature's soothing. However, moving through this, we can see cloud-marked mackerel, black crabs, feathery prawns, the loose silver of whitebait, and once a tuna, the dark prince, muscular, dangerous. Here, it's almost listing, trying to be distracting to what thoughts and feelings may be rushing through this pilot's mind. He's once again noticing all of these small details, all of these hidden beauties within his surroundings that he's not noticed before. And he's really taking in the preciousness of life, and it really, really emphasizes the clarity of this memory, the fact that they can go into such depth about how they viewed these animals. It also goes into the idea of a metaphor for royalty and being royal. So where it says a tuna, the dark prince, muscular, dangerous, this is an indication that nature is more powerful than humans. It always has been, it always will be. And the idea that a tuna is being directly compared to a dark prince, being muscular, dangerous, these adjectives aren't usually used to describe nature, but in this context, it shows that no matter what war goes on, nature will still survive. Nature will thrive. Nature will understand, and it will kind of get through whatever happens because it can adapt. Humans, not so much in a small period of time. So moving over to the second to last stanza, it says, "And though he came back, my mother never spoke again in his presence, nor did she meet his eyes." Here we see a switch in perspective. It's gone from being he, she, they, to my. My mother never spoke again in his presence, nor did she meet his eyes. This is showing the active avoidance to this man. They are showing a lack of respect, almost like they have shame, like he should be guilty. This is a negative, this should not have happened. Here towards the bottom of this stanza, it says, "Only we children still chattered and laughed," which indicates the mass innocence and how unaffected by social conditioning that these younger people are, given that they are too naive, too innocent to understand what is actually going on. So in this final stanza here we see, "Till gradually we too learned to be silent, to live as though he had never returned, that this was no longer the father we loved, and sometimes," she said, "he must have wondered which had been the better way to die." So here, this is social conditioning. We are seeing that these children, as they grow up, they're beginning to realise that this is not how society works. They are going with what they're told. So children, when they see something happening, will often copy that as a method of learning. So this social conditioning is just meaning that these children, they've seen their mother, they've seen their neighbours ignoring their father. And so all of a sudden, they're not speaking to him. They're stopping. They're being silent. He's not the same man that they used to love. They're disowning him. And on this bottom line here, and sometimes she said, he must have wondered which had been the better way to die. This is showing the mass regret felt by him. He may be alive, but he is metaphorically dead to the family. So, whilst his heart still beats, he can still breathe, he's still walking, he's in this home, yet everyone's ignoring he exists. It's like he's dead. It's like he's invisible.